So I've hinted a lot so far in all of these videos that we believe Kohberger, or the perp, has been talking to us through a number of IDs on social media. And the reason we think that is because there's a commonality between all of them. The way they speak, the way they question things, the way they provide sort of almost like enigmas, puzzles. They try to seem superior, that kind of thing. So there's a commonality between them. It's not just anyone on social media. This is specific people on social media. So we're going to go through a few of these people that I suspect may be the perp or maybe Kohberger, and we're going to look at why we think that. So I'm just going to go in any order and go through some of these screenshots that we've got here. So I talked about Anonymous earlier, and Anonymous posted a lot in 4plebs and 4chan questions and trying to be superior and trying to show that he knows more about the crime than anybody else and all that kind of thing. So this is why, it seems like this is a commonality between them all. So in this case, he's asking who took care of the dog Murphy that night while they were at the corner club. So, this makes me think, what's the answer to that then? Is it Brian Kohberger? Who is it? I don't know. Who looked after Murphy? So I would love to know the answer to that question, because I feel like it might be very key and relevant, or it might be the perp trying to send us down a rabbit hole so we don't look at him. Who knows? We don't know. And then, he's trying to seem superior and that kind of thing by saying things like, why would anyone have social media to begin with? Wait, am I autistic? So remember that we believe that actually the perp used social media a lot, right? So I think this is just him being sort of funny, or I don't even know what the word is. But anyway, trying to be a bit superior. So here he's being very superior. Fresh off the press, Daddy's talking again, as if to say, I know better than everybody else here. I'm Daddy, kind of thing. So Daddy is Stephen Gonsalves in this case. So stabs are not the right word. It was like tears. This was a strong weapon, not like a stab, she said. She said there were big open gouges. She said it was quick. They weren't something you were going to be able to call 911. They were not going to slowly bleed out. So I think if this is the perp, he was kind of proud that he'd done this, and he wanted everyone to know about this gory detail, I think. So that this is just me thinking that this is the perp. So if you imagine that this is the perp behind this account, then, why is he doing this? As soon as it comes out, as soon as it's common knowledge or it's public knowledge, he's kind of pointing everybody at this information because I think he's proud that he did it. That, sickening as it is, I think that's what's going on there. Okay. So this is Anonymous again, and this is what I showed you earlier, where he said these horrible things about how the murders happened, which is just horrible. But he also says he's in the shithole PA. Now, first of all, he refers to Pennsylvania as a shithole somewhere else in another posting, I think about visual snow or something like that. So, I think that ties this to Kohberger for a start. But anyway, the police will know who this anonymous guy is. So if it is Kohberger, this all adds up, So then he's talking about symbolism around the numbers, around 13, around 1122, the anagrams, the trail cams. It's just some retard who couldn't get over a joke. So words like retard and things like that, normally that's a kind of superior kind of person looking down on someone else. He's replying to something that somebody posted about all this symbolism around the numbers and stuff, and the anagrams and the trail cams. When they're saying anagrams, there were lots of posts that seemed like puzzles or enigmas or anagrams for us to try and solve to find the perp, basically. And to me, this is just the perp coming back and saying, you're just a retard who can't get over a joke, kind of thing, which I think that's very superior. And again, I think it fits in the mold of the killer. If X and E, that's Xana and Ethan, were the targets, why was Kay wounded like that? So that's Kaylee. So I think, again, this is the perp saying, I know better than you. C and E were not the targets. Kaylee was the one that was wounded badly, and she is the target. I think this is the perp saying that. So a lot of people in this forum at the time thought Xana and Ethan were the targets and Kaylee was just collateral damage kind of thing. But the perp is basically saying, no, I wounded her the most because she was my target, basically. I think that's what's happening here. That's my perception. Okay, so following the dad's latest comments, the early rumours of the scene looking like a bloodbath now seem more credible again. Didn't they also say there was stuff written in blood on the walls? Now, this is creepy because to me this proves that this was the perp, because at that time we did not know that there was stuff written on the walls. I don't think anyone knew that. Now we know that that is the case, but I think that proves that this is the perp. So I've got some pictures of that somewhere of what was written on the walls. We can look at that later. Okay, so this is another fake ID we think the killer used, or the perp used, and that may be Brian Kohberger. So his name is Floyd Decker on Facebook, and there's a picture of him, and we'll see the picture later on. It looks very much like Kohberger put through an AI tool, basically. So Kohberger's face merged with somebody else's or something like that. Now, his location is set to Boise, Idaho. There's also a location on his profile there's other locations on his profile, but anyway, this is what the current was at the time. Silver Point Research, which is it's a cybersecurity company that helps with government spyware programs and devices and apps and stuff like that. So this is all actually kind of true, but I don't think they normally advertise the fact that they do this stuff. So, there's a reason why this profile looks dodgy from a start. Sorry, dodgy is an English term for suspicious, right from the start. Okay, so now, remember, if we think that this is the perp, then it would make sense that this perp knows a lot about security and spyware and all this kind of stuff for many reasons across this whole quadruple murders scenario. Because it seems to me, from rumours that we've heard and also from facts that we've seen, that the perp somehow either switched off the Wi-Fi and the power to the house, and possibly switched off the internet for the whole college area or something like that night. And there's a number of reasons why we think that. There's photos of Kaylee's laptop with no signal kind of showing on her laptop. There were a number of people around at that night that said that the internet went off, and there were all kinds of difficulties contacting people and stuff like that. So, and also that may have some factor in why Dylan had to call the people across the road over to the house rather than making a phone call. We're not sure. But anyway, so there's a lot of reasons why we think the person that did this crime knew a lot about social media, not just about how to use social media, but the technology behind it, like the timestamps with the Xana post, for example. That post about the timestamps, trying to be superior in showing that he knew that the timestamp on the post was different to what it should have been, and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of reasons to believe that this person has a lot of knowledge of security and spyware and stuff like that. So that's just another tip, really. So this is who Floyd Decker sort of is named after, if you like. So the Floyd Decker murder case is like a historic murder mystery kind of thing, and there's like a podcast all about it and that kind of thing. So it's very violent and very horrendous murder. So just so you know who Floyd Decker is. But also Floyd Decker actually lived close to Brian's family, theoretically. So let's see that. So if we look at Floyd Decker, I think it's the third, but we'll look that up in a minute. Pennsylvania. Here he is. So this is the Floyd Decker, we think. So lived in East Stroudsburg. So East Stroudsburg. So, but by the way, when I say that I think this is the Floyd Decker, I mean that is a fake profile, right? But it's called Floyd Decker. So East Stroudsburg in Pennsylvania. And let's see how far that is to, let's open this in maps, how far that is to Albrightsville, directions to Albrightsville. So I'm wondering whether at some point Brian moved out of the family home and lived in East Stroudsburg, okay? Because it's like 37 minutes away, is it? 37 to 45 minutes away. So it's very close to where his mum and dad lived, right? So I'm just wondering whether at some point Brian lived over in East Stroudsburg and, you know, Floyd Decker was like a pseudonym he used when he lived there or something like that. I don't know. But it's very weird. So anyway, that's why I think it's tied to Brian Kohberger, possibly. So this is just another one of the same, I think. What's this one? Okay, so on Floyd Decker's Facebook, it says, "Today the hunted, tomorrow the hunter." So he says self-employed at Silver Point Research, which is a bit weird. He says he went to all these universities and he's got an address at Atlanta, Georgia as well. He says he's widowed and things like that. So that's what we've got here. So let's look at his photo. I thought we had a bigger picture than this. So this photo, I wonder if I can see it on Facebook. I think it might still be on Facebook, this one. Let's go to Floyd Decker. Floyd Decker. Yeah, here he is. And it's got septimus lott in brackets as well. And I'd like to know more about that person too. So I think that this could be a picture of Kohberger merged with another picture. You know that face mash on one of the apps, or an AI that does that kind of face mash type stuff where they merge two pictures and make it look like one. I think that might be that. So his profile is still here on Facebook. And notice this eye logo. We can't show you now because it's disappeared, but there was this eye logo was the logo for a piece of software that is a spy camera that basically you get an email and you click on a link, and when you click on that link, you don't know, but what it does is it sets your screensaver up to be a spy camera. So anyone who sent you that link, they can look at you through your webcam on your laptop and see what you're doing in your room. So this was the logo for that piece of software. So this is why I suspect that maybe Kohberger was watching Kaylee and Maddie in their rooms from software like this, and that's how he knew they were back in the house, or she was back in the house. Of course, there are a number of ways that he could have done that as well. He could have set up their security cameras in their house, for all I know, and he has done that before for other women. We've had lots of reports of that happening previously. He also could have used their Amazon Echo devices or their Google Home devices or something like that. So we don't know, okay? But I think he was spying on them, my personal view. Okay, so this is just basically the same thing. Floyd Decker, the pictures, and so on. So this is the map that I just showed you, really, where he lived in comparison to Albrightsville. Oh, no, this is not that one. Okay, so this is another address. So Floyd Decker's, yeah, that's right. So this is in the Poconos, yeah. So this is where he lived in East Stroudsburg compared to Brian's parents. So yeah, so this is that map we just kind of looked at. Okay, so this is the resume of Floyd Decker that I found just through a Google search, where I got that address from. IT specialist, knows a lot about, I mean, a lot of these skills are pretty common in IT people, but then the security stuff that he's claiming on his Facebook page are not these kind of their more detailed security knowledge. So this is a pretty standard resume. Okay, so yeah, so septimus lott, I did look that up, and there was a little bit about septimus lott, but there wasn't a lot about septimus lott. Let me see. Here we are. Yeah, I can't even find the link that I was looking at. I think the closest was this one, but yeah, I don't think this is related at all to this crime. So okay, so Floyd Decker, he says he works in Android security development, government spyware programs. So it's interesting because Kohberger had an Android, so that would match up. So not sure if that is relevant or if it helps much, but there we go. Okay, so here we can see that there are a number of warrants sealed and redacted to Meta platforms, so that's Facebook basically. Now, a lot of the speculation here is that one each of these is probably Xana and Maddie and Kaylee. We think Ethan wasn't even on Facebook. But then what are the other three? Okay, so that we think there's a lot of information in these warrants, and I think 3 of those are probably these fake IDs that Kohberger used online. So when Bill Thompson says that there's no connection between Kohberger and the victims, I think what he means is there's no direct connection, because they connected via these social media fake profiles, I think. And I think he was stalking them, but they didn't know it, and that's going to be proved in the trial. That's my guess. We'll see. So then we have Pappa Rodger. So this is probably the most famous fake ID that we think the perp used. A lot of us were in this group, University of Idaho Murders Case Discussion, when this guy Pappa Rodger pops up and starts asking really weird questions and seems to know a lot about the case, very superior, very keen to put other people down, and so on. So one of the questions he asked is, why did the killer choose that house over all the others in the area? Now, we could answer that in a number of ways, right? If he was targeting Kaylee, well, that's why he picked that house, right? But probably if he's trying to create the perfect murder as well, that house is really good from that perspective for him, because there's this little house he can hide out in just behind the house in Willenta Drive that we pointed out on the locations video. You can run down that hill, you can get to this car park and that car park, and there's lots of different ways out and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of reasons why that house was quite a good house from that perspective. They always had their back door open, apparently, and it was a house open to lots of people coming in and going out at all times of day and night and stuff like that. So there's lots of reasons why the killer might have chosen that house. However, I think it's because he was targeting Kaylee personally. So he also asked, what do we think is the entrance point to the crime scene? So, do we think he went through the sliding doors or some other method of getting in or out of the crime scene? So again, these questions sound very much like the way we have had Brian described by his students and his colleagues and his peers. And also some of the questions that he asked on that DeSales University questionnaire to criminals, like, why did you choose that victim or target over others, right? This is the same kind of questions, and you'll see that pattern. So I think Pappa Rodger, pretty much, I'm almost guaranteeing that is the perp, and I think it's Brian too. Here's another one. 1 knife and 4 people. The killer took a big risk. The knife could easily have broken off or become ineffective after 1 or 2 murders. Are we sure there is only 1 knife involved? I'm pretty sure he's basically saying there, I used more than 1 knife, guys. So, this is again a superiority thing. It's horrible, really. And again, the questioning, how did you accomplish your goal? Please explain what you were thinking and feeling, So, yeah, to me, this just feels like it's the same person to me, and to a lot of people in the forums too. Another question, do you think the killer took anything from the house? Let's just look in a bit there. How long do we think the killer was in the house? So one thing he said was, he said this before we knew, he said he thought it would take 15 minutes to commit this crime, and people laughed at him in the forums. They said, no way, you couldn't do it all in 15 minutes. And then it turned out that the police think it was about 15 to 20 minutes that the killer was in the house. So he knew this way before they announced all that. Do we think the killer took anything from the house? I would love to know the answer to that question. But I think those questions themselves just sound like, this guy that we've had described to us, the guy that was a teaching assistant at Washington University, who questioned constantly in this manner, and also on his survey of criminals, the same kind of questions. Before leaving, is there anything else you did? How did you leave the scene? These kind of questions, to me, it feels like it's the same person. How did the killer leave the scene? Did he clean up at all? How did you leave the scene? This is from his questionnaire to criminals at DeSales University. Before leaving, is there anything else you did? You see, these questions, they all seem to be very similar to the person who wrote that survey. And the person that wrote that survey is definitely Kohberger. There's no doubt about that. That's not questioned. Okay. I want to point out that this is in the Killing the Clones forum, and we're going to talk about that later. So this was deleted. Now, just so you know, almost as soon as Kohberger was arrested, a lot of this stuff was deleted from Reddit. A lot of the people that were, we think, fake IDs were removed from Reddit and Facebook and other places. So just so you know, a lot of this information disappeared, and it was lucky that some of us had screenshots. So he's basically indicating here that a lot of you are too young. Oh, so by the way, this was posted by someone we think was Pappa Rodgers in Reddit, I think, but it was deleted as soon as he was arrested. So he says a lot of you are too young. So that's basically suggesting that he's older than the average student, I think. But Laura Palmer 13, are you fucking kidding me? So Laura Palmer, I think, is the one that's the witch. Is that right? Who is Laura Palmer? It's something to do with killings. Twin Peaks. There we go. This is the Twin Peaks one. So Twin Peaks is Laura Palmer is murdered in Twin Peaks, and there's an evil spirit that possesses her or something. So basically, he's saying if you were too young, you might not know who Laura Palmer is, but there's an ID in here called Laura Palmer 13. Are you kidding me? How is he interacting with so many different accounts? And again, this perp was using lots of different IDs. Yeah. So Laura Palmer is the teenage victim in David Lynch's Twin Peaks. These are not real names. I feel like I should know what Sarah Osbourne comes from. So Sarah Osbourne is the witch in the Salem trials, I think. Hang on, is that right? Salem witches. Osbourne. Sarah. Yeah. So she was a colonist accused of witchcraft in the Salem witch trials. Okay. So, again, I think someone like Brian Kohberger, who's been studying criminal history and criminology and all that kind of stuff, and is obsessed, I think, with this whole world, I think he would know who Laura Palmer is and who Sarah Osbourne is. So these names, I think he used them intentionally. So Laura Palmer account also follows Kaylee's sister. Okay, and this is before this account followed Kaylee's sister before Kohberger was arrested. So, there's reason to think that Laura Palmer and Sarah Osbourne IDs were actually Brian Kohberger, or the perp at least. So this is another question. I feel like the white car isn't relevant. So this is why this to me makes it even more likely it's going to be, Brian Kohberger, I think, because I think Brian Kohberger knows that he's switched cars, and there's going to be proof that that car was not actually his car. His car was probably parked in his own driveway at the time. There's probably lots of evidence of that. And he did that on purpose to make it look like the police were stitching him up, or the white car wasn't relevant, and that kind of thing. This to me feels like a superiority post again, and like, I know more than you do about the murders and stuff like that. And here again, he sounds superior. Fight me. Ellie is no closer to solving this than they were 30 days ago. So he's basically saying, ha ha ha, you can't catch me. I got away with this, that kind of thing, I think, which luckily is not correct. Okay. So this is a close-up of Pappa Rodger's photo. And I think you can see again, this looks a bit like Brian Kohberger, but mashed with another picture or something like that. I think there's a commonality between these IDs, that this is what he does. He takes one picture and merges it in with him and comes up with a picture that he uses for the IDs, the fake IDs that he uses, I think. Come on, why is this not coming up? What am I doing wrong? Let's put this one here. There we go. So this is more Pappa Rodger's stuff. They are looking for a very specific knife. Now, this was this was very early days. This was before we knew anything about the K-bar, sheath, and all that stuff. So he posted, they're looking for a very specific knife. Why are you debating the sheath theory so hard? So Pappa Rodger said he thought that they'd found the sheath of the knife that was used in the murders. And everyone was saying on Reddit, why would anyone take a sheath to a murder? And what makes you think they found a sheath and that kind of thing? And of course, Pappa Rodger knows, because he's the perp, we think, right? So this guy says, because who would carry a sheath? Why would anyone carry a sheath? So Pappa's being, very superior again, saying, who would carry a large exposed knife? And then this guy says, sheaths are meant for belts. And so that's a clue, I think, actually, because I think, maybe the perp did have a belt and was carrying the sheath on his belt, probably. Something like that. Oh, hang on a second, let me do it this way. There we go. Okay, so Pappa Rodger is replying to a picture that, unfortunately, I don't have the picture here. He says, that isn't a bedroom light. So basically what he's saying is it's a bathroom light. And that's because he knows, because he was in the house and he was the perp. So this guy says, what does it look like to you? And he says, the hall light. Oh, sorry, the hall light, not the bathroom light. So then somebody else says, it could be the hallway light or the third floor bathroom light. But basically, Pappa Rodger knows it's the hall light because he's been in the house, because he was the perp. I strongly believe. Again, trying to appear, superior, and as if he knows more about the crimes than anybody else, which he does. Okay, so this is the picture we're talking about in that case, where this guy says, this is helpful, thanks. He's saying this to Pappa Rodger. Could be a hall window on the third floor or living room on the second floor. Why does this matter either way? I'm so confused. So, there's all this debate going on about what the house is like internally and stuff. And at the time, no one realizes why that's relevant or why it's so important that this guy knows that stuff. But he knows because he's actually been inside that house. He actually committed the crime, I think. So Pappa says they don't clean bodies at a crime scene. So again, Brian Kohberger would know that because he studied criminology, but most people don't know that. I wouldn't know that. He says the amount of blood must have been tremendous for them to clean the bodies at the crime scene, basically, because they don't normally do that. That's not what they do. So, he's basically telling us that he knows stuff about this crime. And he's also, to me, indicating that he's studied criminology. So now this guy's saying, due to the number of victims and assuming each victim was stabbed multiple times, I'm sure that there was visible evidence of a guard. I'm not sure what that means. For all we know, the investigators on the scene wiped a couple of stab wounds. Oh, sorry, that's a knife guard, he means. So round the bottom of the actual knife blade, there's like a guard so that you don't hurt your hand when you're using it, you know? So he's talking about that guard. For all we know, the investigators on the scene wiped a couple of stab wounds clean to look for bruising, because usually when you do a really terrible stabbing, the guard will actually hit the body and cause a bruise, I think. We found this out afterwards in the discussions. I think it's far more logical than finding a sheath. So he thinks the reason they know what knife they're looking for is because they know where the guard was and that it bruised the bodies or something. He thinks that's more likely than they found a sheath. He thinks they can't possibly have found a sheath. Sheaths are usually attached to a belt, he said. So Pappa comes back and says, but the police were very specific about the type of knife used. Scott Jutt apparently told them his shop doesn't sell the specific brand of knife, and I haven't got the end of that, sorry. So Scott Jutt, let's look at Scott Jutt and find out about him. And how did Kohberger or the Perp or Pappa Rodgers know about Scott Jutt at the time? So let's see. This, I think, is what I'm looking for. Hang on a sec. Oops. Okay. So Scott Jutt, general manager of Moscow Building Supply, told the Idaho Statesman that police have visited the store more than once to ask whether the retailer sold anyone K-bar brand knives, also known as K-bar knives. Now, this was like new information at this time, and yet Pappa Rodger seems to know this. So how does he know all that? Has he got access to the police records in some way? Does he work for the police? Some people say he applied to be an intern in the Pullman, Washington police force, and maybe he actually got in, and maybe at this time, at the time of the crimes, maybe he was actually working in the digital forensics area for Pullman, Washington. Wouldn't that be horrendous if that was the case? So it's definitely possible, and I wouldn't put it past Brian Kohberger to have done that if indeed he is the perp. Okay, so we've got here, this idea that you can use an app to make yourself look cartoonish and to sort of morph your face into the picture of some other picture and so on. And also that Pappa Rodger's account was disabled like immediately after Brian was arrested. So, there's a lot of speculation that Pappa Rodgers was Brian Kohberger. Let's look at this. The reason that I know Kohberger was Pappa Rodgers is they had an eagle in their cover pic, which represents the Marine Corps globe emblem. He also had a military figure in the display picture, which weirdly resembled Kohberger. Putting them both together, we can draw a link to the knife, of which the sheath was previously discussed on social media by Rodgers before the release of any details. Given his username was Pappa, with his DNA being found on it, and his last name being Rodgers, which is a nod to Elliot Rodgers, it's fair to say that Kohberger and Pappa Rodgers were one and the same. It's glaringly obvious. The debate must end. So Pappa Rodgers it could be a number of things, but a lot of people think that the Rodgers part is a nod to Elliot Rodgers. So Elliot Rodgers is that incel that I told you about who killed lots of sorority and fraternity members and cheerleaders from California, from a college city. And he wrote a manifesto that Brian appears to have been reading just before arrest. And so we think that maybe Kohberger kind of identified with Elliot Rodgers or was interested in Elliot Rodgers. I think, generally speaking, Kohberger was interested in all serial killers and all multiple murderers. He read a lot. We've got evidence from a number of sources that when he studied at university, he really wanted to get to know the real details, and he talked to Kathleen Ransland a lot about the BTK killer and things like that. So, we think he was kind of really interested in all this anyway. But then the Pappa Rodgers ID profile, was a nod to Elliot Rodgers, but also Pappa and Rodger are military terms. So Rodger means over and out. Yes, okay, I got that message, that kind of thing. And Pappa is another term that the military use, which I've got something on that somewhere, and I can't remember exactly what it is right now. Can't remember the details, but I think it comes up soon. Okay, so this was posted and deleted, so it may have been Brian Kohberger, or it may have been just a person in Reddit or something. Thank you for posting all of this. You're definitely onto something here. The way PD's questions line up with the questions he asked here. So this is PD, which is Pappa Rodgers. I think it should say PR, I think. Creepy and not a coincidence. Also creep vibe, how he kept saying we. I can see doing that once in certain occasions, but about this crime and the circumstances, something is just wrong about it. So the reason I think he uses the term we is because he thinks he's schizophrenic and he has an alternative identity, if you like, which I think is probably Floyd Decker or Pappa Rodgers or something, or both or all, I don't know. Also, the name Pappa Rodgers, both can be related to the military. Pappa is the word for P on the radio transmissions, and Rodger is a term used when you get the message and you say you agree. Very odd indeed. And some of these questions, how did he hold the knife? Was it sheathed or unsheathed? He was definitely playing a game to see how many would get it right or wrong, a way of gloating. It had to be him. And the one commenter who said, "You sound like a psycho," was absolutely right. Has Pappa Rodger posted since his arrest? I've missed that. And actually, no, he didn't post since his arrest. Somebody took over his account and posted again, but it wasn't him. We found that out. That was proof that wasn't him. Okay, so let's keep going. There's a lot of stuff here. Oh gosh, come on. Here we go. So this is another question. Did the killer drive, walk, or some combination of both to the scene? Now, you've seen what I think he did. I think he walked a little bit. I think he took an e-bike. I think he used more than one car and a truck. So that's my theory. So one of his questions on the survey for the criminals at DeSales University was, how did you travel to and enter the location that the crime occurred? So I think he'd done a lot of research on the best way to get away with this crime by creating chaos and reasonable doubt by using multiple methods of transportation and walking some of it as well, and so on. I'm not sure if we can see this one. Can we see this one? Yes, we can. So this is Pappa Rodgers again. Of the evidence released, the murder weapon has been consistent as a large fixed blade knife. This leads me to believe they found the sheath. The evidence was released prior to autopsies. Now, this was November the 30th, and they had not released the information yet that the sheath had been found. So this is another reason why people thought Pappa Rodgers was possibly Brian. There's something weird about these photos too, and I can't get the originals of that, so I can't comment on it really, but I think there was something in the photos that suggested that he'd morphed the photos of the victims or something in his profile picture. Okay, so this is more Pappa Rodgers stuff. Pappa says, I've never met a good coroner who would make that determination prior to an autopsy. You've never been to a crime scene. Again, he's trying to be superior. So this guy says, dude, a stab wound with a large wide knife is unmistakable and never mistaken as a gunshot wound. Lol. So what they're arguing about is, how did the coroner know they weren't shot rather than stabbed with a big knife, that kind of thing. So Pappa says, not true. Once again, have you seen a wound from a hollow point? Stop, I'm done with amateur. You see how superior he is? And when he says a hollow point, let's look hollow point up so that you know what that is exactly. I'm not exactly sure of the wording. Hollow point bullet is a type of expanding bullet which expands on impact with a soft target. So what he's basically saying is, you can't tell when you first go to the crime scene whether someone's been shot by one of those bullets that kind of explodes inside someone's body, or whether they've been, gouged with a knife, he's saying. He's saying, you're acting like an amateur if you don't know that. So he's trying to say he's superior to you, he knows stuff you don't. Well, this guy, if it is Brian Kohberger, has studied criminology all his life pretty much. and probably does know a lot more than everybody else in this forum about all of this, especially if he committed the crime. So actually, that might not be a good thing if he knows all this stuff, right? Okay. So then someone's saying, how do you know all of this? I'm not buying this sheath theory of yours. If we find out one day and I'm wrong, I'll eat crow. He's so sure that the sheath hasn't been found. So Pappa says to him, do you carry a knife? And he says, give it a rest. You sound like a psycho. How ironic that he's actually talking to the psycho who committed these crimes, we think. So then he says stuff like, I made the original post and you have gone down this path. Very superior kind of comments. Okay. Some of this is more damning than anything else, I think, because the whole superiority complex and the fact that he knows so much about the crime, to me, if they can link this Pappa Rodger account to Brian Kohberger, which I'm sure Facebook can, it really is damning, this stuff. Okay, so Pappa says, if the door was left open or the heat wasn't on, are we sure of the timeline of deaths? Now, this was, before anyone had said that the heat wasn't on in the house and that the electricity was off and things like that. Or there was something about the electricity was off, or when it came back on, the heat was on really, really high and it made it really hot. So the time of deaths couldn't be determined or something like that. But this was before we knew all of that. So Pappa Rodgers knew this before anybody else did. It was 28 degrees outside and overcast the night of the murders, he says. So 28 degrees is very, very cold, yeah? So if he's true that the door was left open and there was no heat on because the electricity was off, then yes, it might be difficult to determine the time of death, especially if the heat came on later on when the electricity came back on and it got really hot. If there was some theory that maybe the murderer had turned up the thermostat before they left or something. So I'm not sure exactly what he's getting at, but it's definitely very superior, and it does sound like he knows something about this death, this murder. Sorry. So he highlights some stuff here. The suspect vehicle was at 4:04 a.m. and leaves at 4:20 a.m. So that's like 15 minutes, right? That this whole thing was done. Now this was obviously later after this post. So this post was on the 14th of December. The PCA doesn't come out till I think the 29th of December. But Pappa says, how long was the killer in the house? Again, a question just like his style of questions. And so he says 15 minutes. And what happens in the end? It was 15 minutes, right? And I think it was 15 minutes each time. I think when he went to kill Kaylee and Maddie, I think that was from 3:30 to 3:45. And I think he did that in 15 minutes too. So, this to me shows that Pappa Rodgers knows what's going on here. And to me, he's the perp. Whether or not that's Brian Kohberger, that's up to the police to work out. But certainly sounds like it to me. Brian Kohberger definitely has a lot of inside information on killings and murders and how to get away with things and stuff like that. Okay, so again, I think we've already talked about this. Yeah, we've talked about this one. Oh, so someone even said here after we found out it was Brian, someone said Pappa Rodgers, because that's how you escaped Brian. So once we knew it was probably Brian, we started almost joking at him at these posts. Okay. So Pappa posted this picture and said there are lights under that canopy. So these lights here under this canopy. I think he was trying to hint that, he didn't go in through the front because he would be seen. There were lights and stuff. So he went through the back, through the sliding door. I think he was trying to hint that. So this guy's saying definitely possible it's an outside light. Hard to establish what level the light is on. I don't think it's hard to establish. It's pretty obvious it's on level 1. Both Google Street Views I reference are from different angles. Body cam footage is from the middle of the field, he says. So it just seems like, Pappa's trying to say, I know how, why the killer chose to go a particular route and that kind of thing. Okay, the killer has a sexual dysfunction. Thoughts. So assuming that this is Brian Kohberger talking and he is the perp, if you assume that he is the perp, then this is a funny question, right? Because we think Brian Kohberger did have a kind of sexual dysfunction, right? We think he could not have a relationship with a woman. He couldn't get close to any women and so on like that. Somebody made a joke, which was really bad taste. He likes his state media, which is really horrible. And then, Pappa's kind of almost teasing that, But, it's interesting that he asked this question, right? Because incels are basically involuntary celibates, right? So we think Brian Kohberger was an incel. We think he wanted to have sex, but he couldn't get sex. And we think that was a factor in this crime. Okay. So interesting. Anything else we can see here in a sec? So the largest Facebook group dedicated to this crime had 152,000 members. One of the most active members was Pappa Rodgers. Actually, it was Pappa Rodger without this S. See any resemblance? I posted his Reddit survey. I'm also including his postings. So this was the first time we all thought, oh my gosh, this guy could be Kohberger. And she did a whole comparison of his posts and stuff. And, Pappa Rodgers even, put in some pictures of the house and where he thought things were and where he thought bodies were found and all that kind of thing. So there was a lot of insider information, I think, in that guy. Whether or not it was Kohberger or whether it was the perp, I think he knew a lot. So the killer is not in the victim's immediate circle. So he says that as a statement. And of course, he knows it's true, we think, because Brian Kohberger was not in the victim's immediate circle. The killer is not a student, thoughts, because he's not a student, he's a student teacher, a teaching assistant, right? Can someone post actual evidence showing where the bodies were found? So he's asking for evidence of that because he wants to counter it and show them that he knows more than they do, basically. I know this is popular, but this is where I think the victims were found. And that's where that picture came in, where he thought the bodies were found in here. Let's see. Here we go. So this picture here, can I get in that big? Let me just see if I can get in. There we go. So this picture here is where he said, the point of entry was through the kitchen, the sliding doors, and he pointed to different rooms where the bodies were found, the bathroom. He said the body was found in the bathroom and in the bedroom, which is another reason why I think Ethan might have been partially in the bedroom and partially in the bathroom. Okay. What else have we got here? There's so much stuff here. What's this one? Okay, so this is the one where he really told us what he thought where the bodies were, kind of thing. So the sliding door, the kitchen, the bathroom, and he's put Ethan here, kind of just outside the bathroom, and he's put Xana in the bedroom here. And on the first floor, he hasn't actually put where he thought the bodies were, interestingly. But he's kind of trying to back up the responses by showing these pictures and so on. But anyway, he seemed to know where the bodies were anyway. That's the important thing. Let's see this one. So fixed blade means that it's not a folding knife. The way they could guess was by the impressions or bruising around the stab wounds and the guard and so on. And Pappa Rodgers is saying you wouldn't be able to tell that at the crime scene. This guy's saying you would be able to tell where the guard was and where it left its mark. But Pappa Rodgers is basically trying to say, I know better than you do, sort of thing. Someone who is read, right, so he's questioning this guy, Dustin. So he says to Pappa, someone who is about ready to commit a premeditated murder. If you were sneaking into someone's house looking to kill them with a knife, you would have the knife in a sheath when you entered. I think the killer had it in his hand upon entering in case he was confronted and forced to fight. So Pappa says, how did the killer hold the knife prior to entering the scene, in your opinion? And he says, I would guess he carried it in his hand from wherever he came from. So Pappa's having a good old laugh here because he knows that a sheath was used, right, to hold that knife. Again, trying to, his superiority, he's amused by all these people getting everything wrong. I wonder why this killer, so this is Sarah Osbourne. So again, we think Sarah Osbourne was the perp, was Brian Kohberger. I wonder why the killer didn't strip you guys, because I honestly would love to have played with your bodies for a while you were still warm. How sick is that? I mean, for anyone to post that, it's just sickening. This was very soon after the murders. And this person says, what in the hell is wrong with you? Look at her most recent post. It's absolutely disgusting. And then she says, nothing, just giving the truth. But, you know, I believe behind that Sarah Osbourne ID is the killer, is the perp. And I think it might be Brian Kohberger. So this was in a whole video called the Kill the Clones Reddit post by Bubbly Waters. Now, I believe Bubbly Waters was either a neighbor of 1122 or she was there for a party that night next door to 1122. She's become a little bit famous on YouTube. She's done a lot of posts around this whole thing, this whole case. And the Kill the Clones thing, we'll come to that later, is it's a whole idea that there was like a video being shot that night live of a mass killing, and everyone was watching it on the Grub Truck security camera. You can see them all looking at it and laughing and thinking, wow, that's scary, kind of thing. And now thinking maybe that was a live transmission of people being killed for real. So watch Bubbly Waters' channel on YouTube. There's a lot of information on there that you might want to watch, and I've got a bit about that later on here. We talked about Septimus Lott. His pseudonym is Floyd J. Kaufman. Again, I think this is the perp, Brian Kohberger. He says things like just a pissed off fly in the ointment, which sounds very much like this same person. Android security and development at Self-Employed, Boise State University, Boise, Idaho, very similar to the Floyd Decker profile on Facebook and so on. So, and Floyd Decker even says Septimus Lott in brackets, in parentheses. So here we've got Septimus Lott again. Notice that he's got a nickname of Trey, and we talked to Trey Patterson, and remember Trey Patterson is the other ID that we think might be Brian Kohberger or the perp. Catman I think is ironic, unfortunately. So on Trey Patterson's profile, we'll see that in a bit, there's a cat which we think is being strangled in the picture, and that's horrendous. So yeah. So the quote under Septimus Lott's favorite quotes is, ask me no questions and I'll tell you no lies. Interesting, because we think we were asking him questions and he was telling us the truth, which is pretty scary. Okay. Septimus Lott. So this was all on Septimus Lott's account. I think it's all disappeared now. A seeker, a radar, and someone who knows the beast of law is a fraud. It just as soon eat you as protect you. Again, remember, we think this is the perp or Brian Kohberger. It's just another account of his. No children, don't really like them, but protective of them, loves animals, wary of people, and favorite color is silver. Remember, we had that silver light technologies for Floyd Decker. Hate donuts, likes porn, hates hypocrite, letting go and catching on. Very cryptic, not quite sure, but I think that's probably the perp as well, Septimus Lott. Gang stalking, target support. Septimus Lott exposes the tactics of multi-stalking, community harassment, mobbing, gang stalking. Zerzexum. I'm going to look that up so that you can see the definition. It's a little bit weird. Hang on. Zerzexum. There we go. So it was a psychological warfare technique used by the Ministry of State Security to repress political opponents in East Germany. Okay, so it's very weird that he's mentioning that in here. Again, this to me sounds like the same person. Anyway, let's see what else we have here. So the Moscow Slayer is another ID that we think might be Brian Kohberger or the perp or what have you. Now he's saying, taking my best friend Cheeseburger for a walk. I live alone and don't have any friends, so it's always nice to have him around. Now, some people think this might be referring to the dog that was filleted. I think he's called Buddy, I think. So best friend, Buddy. And calling him Cheeseburger, it sounds like he's preparing to eat him, right? So it's pretty sick. So some people think that might be what that's referring to. I craved the skin and fried and ate it. It was very nice. So remember Buddy, the dog that was skinned and filleted or filleted. This is basically suggesting that he kind of ate that dog or part of that dog or whatever, but horrible. So this is saying the real Moscow Slayer prefers to skin dogs, not your colour. Not quite sure what she means by that, or if that's a she here. I thought you were married with 2 kids. So people are just realising that this Moscow Slayer is a bit weird. There's something going on here. They're not sure what's going on. I don't think the poor dog has enough psychological training to deal with somebody who has stolen valor and thinks they are the Zodiac. So Zodiac is a reference to the Zodiac killer. I'm not exactly sure what this guy means by this, but basically they suspect he killed the dog, I think, and filleted the dog, basically. Now, this is from Bubbly Waters again, her YouTube channel, Killing the Clones, and there's various parts to this. And we'll talk more about Killing the Clones later. Okay, we've only got 2 more to go here. So someone is investigating whether or not, this guy is a criminology class guy posing questions to students that he already knows the answers to. Aligns perfectly with this idea that this is Kohberger. So this is, pure speculation and opinion from me, not trying to delve into the case as an internet detective, just found this bit interesting. I'm assuming this Facebook user, and I think she's talking about Pappa Rodgers in this case, is completely innocent and not Brian until he can be proven otherwise in court. Apparently, the rumour has it, the Facebook user has not posted since the arrest, and one of the screenshots says the account has been scrubbed. That's so interesting. I've been following this case so much. I've read all about the Reddit accounts that have been scrubbed as well. Personally, I believe it definitely could be, and it would be a wild thing if he really was involved in this case. I'm just avoiding putting my opinion out there. I speculate shouldn't influence anybody else, but something's wrong with the person. All of the Reddit speculation and discourse and posts like this are so interesting to me, but the people that have taken it too far and ruined lives early in the investigation really scare me. Not saying that this is you at all. That is a good post. Just explaining why I felt the need for a side note. So there's a lot of speculation in the Reddits and stuff that Pappa Rodgers was the killer, basically. Now, this is the start of something else. So this is an ID that I talked to you about before, Trey Patterson. Now, Trey Patterson posted on 4chan, but he also had a Facebook account. And there were 2 Facebook accounts called Trey Patterson, and people were getting confused between the 2. The one that we're talking about that we think was the perp and think was Kohberger was very nasty. It said schizo, gun-loving, anti-gun control, hating and stuff like that on his post, right? So he thought he was a schizophrenic. He thought he loved guns and he was anti-gun control, basically. And he would post a lot of stuff that seemed very superior and so on. Again, this photo that looks like Brian Kohberger mashed with another picture. He posted things like this: all right, maggots, my turn. The next level doesn't get to be decided by you. It will be decided by me. You're about to get, and it goes on. And this was shortly after the murders, this post. This post was like a few days after the This says, you're about to get a real lesson in the use of power. I'm going to show you the definition of a real bad motherfucker. Keep your sorry ears to the ground. He's really threatening and superior and so on. He says, you are only spectators. I am the show. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff like this. And, you know, Trey Patterson generally posted a lot of bad stuff. Now, I'm going to show you some of that. I'm not going to show you all of it because there are some things that I think the police probably wouldn't want me to show you. But let's have a look at Trey Patterson. What did I do with Trey Patterson? I thought it was in here. It's not in here. Conversations with Trey. Here it is. Okay, so some of this stuff I don't really want you to see, but some of it you can see. So one thing was, it appeared that he posted this on after the murders, but he changed the date on the post, so it looked like it was posted on November the 9th. That's the first thing. So he obviously knows enough about Facebook to change the dates on his posts. Now, Facebook themselves can tell that someone's done that, but we as readers of Facebook cannot tell that, right? So it looks like this post was made on November the 9th, but actually this post was made like after the murders, okay? So if you read the post, it's quite chilling. It is rare that we get the chance to go back in time and try to do things a little different, to show that we've moved beyond the dreadful past mistakes of ourselves. But it does happen. You will sometimes be taken back to that time and that place. And when it does, even if you are failing again, waste not this time that is left, for it is a chance you will never again receive. It is a one-time gift, gone as quickly as it came. Now, to me, that sounds like somebody who is kind of playing with the audience, but also kind of saying, you know, I wish I could go back in time and not do what I just did. I made a dreadful past mistake, but it's happened, you know. But anyway, he posted this theoretically after the murders, but then went back and changed the date on it. That is the theory anyway. And the way you can tell that is apparently through some Facebook timestamp thing that I don't really understand. And I work in tech, by the way. I've got 35 years in tech, but I don't know how to do that. So, you know, this is a big deal, right? So this is another Trey Patterson posting. He said, there are several reasons for these illuminated warnings, sensors, wirings, etc. Seems somewhat innocuous, yet it's the music that came on that's the frosting for this cake. Now, this music is the Crash by Primitives song, and that is a really haunting song that seems to be about like a murderer, I think. I may be misunderstanding that, but he's like, he thinks it's a coincidence that came on his radio just after the crimes, I think. Now, he's saying, is this a spiritual experience, or is my radio playing games with me? Like, is my radio and my car in cahoots, either for me or against me? The last possibility, they'd throw me in an asylum for saying it, so I won't. So is he having some kind of mental episode here? And I don't understand this. This is another one of his enigmas, his puzzles that he posts. I'll just keep gathering while I wear a really warm shirt. I really don't understand that. If anybody knows what that means, I have no clue what that means. We should probably look at Crash by the Primitives so you know the lyrics. Primitives. So here it is. Here you go, way too fast. Don't slow down, you're going to crash. You should watch your step. Don't look out, going to break your neck. You see, going to break your neck, right? So shut your mouth. It's very confrontational, threatening. I don't know what you'd call it, because I'm not listening anyhow. I've had enough of you, enough to last a lifetime through. You know, this sounds to me like someone that's reached the end of their rope and is about to do something really bad, right? That's what it sounds like to me. So what do you want of me? Got no words of sympathy. So he doesn't care, basically. And if I go around with you, you know that I get messed up too with you. You know, this song, it's haunting for me. Here you go, way too fast. Don't slow down, you're going to crash. You don't know what's been going down. You've been running all over town. So this, you don't know what's been going down. I feel like, you know, that song means something to him because he knows what's been going down, but nobody else does. They've been running all over town to try and work it out, but he doesn't. He knows what's going on. So yeah, it just seems like a really haunting song to me, and not a coincidence that he posted this. So again, I think to me that is the perp, and horrible. I'd love to know what this last bit means though, about I'll just keep gathering while I wear a really warm shirt. Not sure what that means. And the other thing is he posts the actual dashboard, and I feel like that's a clue as well. He posts clues all the time. So I'd love to know if this is the Hyundai Elantra dashboard maybe, or if it is the black truck dashboard or something like that. I don't know. I don't know anything about cars at all, but if you could help me with that, let me know. Okay. And there's a lot of other stuff here. So we've already talked about this one. This is the full text though, so you might want to read it. So, all right, maggots, my turn. The next level doesn't get to be decided by you, it'll be decided by me. Now, so to me, this is saying I'm going to do something else. I'm going to not, those 4 people that I killed the other day, that's one thing, but now more's coming. I'm going to do something else. You're about to get a real lesson in the use of power. So it's really threatening. I'm going to show you the definition of a real bad. Keep your sorry ears to the ground, and maybe your shock won't last as long as mine did. You are only spectators. I am the show. Very superior. Again, sounds like the same person as all these other fake IDs to me. Okay. So this was another thing he posted, and I didn't get the top of it, unfortunately, but this was on November the 25th, so 2 weeks after the murders. Warm, quiet, and comfortable. I'm not sure what it says. Place to be out of the cold and something isolation of my own self-designed dearth and destitution. I am thankful for those unnamed, for their gracious tolerance, which I know comes not with fluid ease. So it's as if somebody knows that he's done something bad, and it doesn't make them feel good to sort of help him and support him, but they're doing it anyway. So some of us speculated maybe somebody in the family knew about what he was doing or what he'd done. I swim too far out, and in my selfish need for deliverance, very often lose sight of the larger efforts of harbouring and caretaking and concern by those around me. Again, it sounds like he's talking about family to me. Are they, harbouring him? Are they going to take care of him and that kind of thing? Now, remember that we think on November the 25th, that's around Thanksgiving, we think he was at Las Vegas with his family. Okay, and we'll give you more proof of that later on. I'm thankful for their jarring patience. Sometimes I push beyond reasonable limits. It is goodwill that is undeserved and thought-provoking. So even though he knows he's done something really terrible, somebody is accepting of him and helping him, it sounds like to me. So, and I think he's with the Las Vegas family at this point. So I don't know who in the Las Vegas family is helping him or whatever. Maybe his dad is there. Maybe his aunt has flown his dad over and that's who he's talking about. I don't know. But I think somebody in the family knew. Anyway, so this is Trey Patterson again. Now, this is the horrible photo of what we think is him strangling a cat to death. There's reasons apparently to believe that this cat is actually dying and, is not going to live. So I don't know much about, I'm not a vet, but I think somebody was a vet in the forums and they said, that cat is actually being strangled there horribly. And also notice this quote, it's easy, just say slowly but a little sinisterly, yes, we went to Patterson's. I'm not sure what this means exactly, but it sounds very sinister. I don't know where Patterson's is. Somebody suggested it's a mental health facility that maybe Kohberger had been to, but maybe it's just Trey Patterson's house, maybe it's just Kohberger's house, I don't know. So this location here, I've been trying to find out where it is. So it looks to me like it's in either Idaho or Pennsylvania because of the trees and stuff. But I've tried to see where this location is. Somebody said it's the Arboretum, or whatever it's called, Arboretum, which is near King Road and near West Palouse Drive. I don't know if that's where it is, but I'd love to know. So notice that Trey Patterson also lives in Boise, Idaho. There's a common theme here, and is also divorced, and has also got like weird quotes on his page, right? Okay. So this is a post that when he changed his profile picture, he put the Donald says grab him by the pussy. He's talking about Donald Trump. I'm sure you all know about the grab him by the pussy quote. So it's what I had to work with. So basically he's saying I grabbed this pussy by the throat, basically. I think he's also saying I can't get any pussy. I can't get a woman. I think he's saying that. But anyway, so this is a really sinister picture because, you know, we had a vet say that it looked like that cat was actually being strangled in that picture. Okay, so this is the most key posting that Trey Patterson probably made. He said, they were very beautiful, sexy enough to muddle your thoughts for a minute. Their power of lust is what formed their weakness, and they thought that a sweet, nervous man was just an easy laugh or dismissal once their transaction was done. Now, this is what makes me think maybe they were on OnlyFans, and maybe he watched them from Pennsylvania before he came to Washington. Maybe Kaylee and Maddie were, you know, on OnlyFans, had a transaction and kind of dismissed him once the transmission was done, or transaction was done, sorry. And that they maybe said to him he was sweet and, you know, he was nervous and stuff like that. I don't know. Something about that made him mad, I think. I still wonder, did they let out even a tiny laugh as they were bladed? Oh my God. So he's basically saying, it wasn't funny to get stabbed, was it? Basically, it's really horrible. And then he says it's hard to scream through duct tape. Now, as far as I know, there was no duct tape used in these crimes, but maybe if he is the killer, he knows that duct tape was used, and maybe the police have kept that quiet. So if that is the case, then, you know, this could definitely be the perp. Okay. So my guess is the truth of this is that this is Brian Kohberger, and he did know Maddie and Kaylee through OnlyFans, but he probably used a pseudonym on OnlyFans anyway. They probably use pseudonyms on OnlyFans, and they probably upset him. And after that, he was bent on revenge for what they'd said or done or laughed at him or whatever it was. And, you know, he's kind of glad in a horrible way that, you know, he's shown them it wasn't funny, basically, by killing them, which is just horrible. Also, the fact that he says that they had duct tape and they couldn't scream, we do know that there were no screams, really. So, you know, that could be a sign that he is the perp as well. Oh, we've already dealt with this one. So this is a close-up of that picture of Trey Patterson, which basically looks very much like Floyd Decker and so on. So it's basically a picture of Brian merged with another person, I think. Okay. And that's it for this session.